Okay, good evening. Welcome to Township Board of Trustees Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, February 11th. Mr. Mansur, would you lead us in the pledge?
Sure. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I'll ask this time for approval of the agenda.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Support.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we will open the floor for public comment at this time. And we'll start on the right side of the room. Anybody care to make comment? Okay, we'll move to the left side of the room. Anybody care to make public comment? Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
So you go.
I'm back.
Yes.
My name is Sarah Hugo. My address is 5545 Thrush Drive in Grand Blanc Township. Mr. Massey, I just wanted to publicly thank you for contacting me regarding our street. It did get patched by the Road Commission on Friday, which I appreciate. And I just wanted to give you some copies of some pictures that I took yesterday, just to show you that this is not a solution for improving our road.
Miss Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
May I make a comment?
Sure.
I would like for you to also thank the director, Mr. Jeff Sears. We worked together on that project.
Oh, and where is
Without
that?
without him, it could not have been possible.
Thank you, Mr. Sears. I appreciate you. I've been in contact with him
Oh, okay.
as well, so
Okay.
yes. But if I
Sure.
can give you these pictures?
Yeah.
I only made one copy because it uses
Yeah,
a
we can
lot
start
of
down
ink,
there
so-
and pass them down.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else care to make public comment? Okay, seeing no further public comment, we'll bring the conversation back to the board. And we have with us this evening Mr. Dan Potter, and the board will hear an update from Potter Consulting regarding the Reftelis water rate study and any potential considerations to the impacts associated with changing the water ordinance to allow residents to disconnect from the municipal water system and install wells for irrigation purposes. So, good evening.
Good evening, everybody. How you doing? I just want to give you an update on the Reftelis rate study. First of all, we are down to towards the end of it. We're just dotting I's and crossing T's right now. We will have the draft report to you, I'm going to say the last week in February, first week in March, in time for you to review it before the March board meeting if you'd like. If you'd like longer to review it, we could move the presentation till April, whichever the board would like, but we'll have the draft report to you, like I said, the last of February, 1st of April, March rather. Everything's going good with the report. Mr. Sears and I have been working with Reftelis for the last several months on this project. One of the things that you've asked us to look at was the impact of commercial irrigation leaving the water system. In the last page of my board report, there's a table that shows what the impacts could be, potentially. And based on if all of the commercial irrigation left the water system, the impact would be a little over $300,000 a year, $323,000 a year. Obviously, we have no way of knowing who would choose to disconnect and who wouldn't. So that's the cost that we assign to it as a potential. The impact to rates are in the neighborhood of 3.5% to 4%. The cost, if we did it on a per meter basis, it'd be about $41 per meter, somewhere in that range. So those are the costs associated with.
Those costs, Mr. Potter, not to interrupt, but just to clarify, are across the board or for those residents, or who is it?
That would be the cost to the water system and to the remaining ratepayers that were left.
Not just the commercial then.
This is just the commercial leaving. We didn't look at residential irrigation leaving the system. We just looked at commercial.
But that cost impact wouldn't be just for commercial.
No, it would be across all water users.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Massey?
may I ask you a question?
Sure.
You gave me a number, 300,000 approximately.
$323,280 if you
Well,
want
you
that.
just rounded off, you said 300,000. So what is the total amount that the water system brings into the township, the total amount?
The total budget or the total revenue?
Total revenue.
Total revenue is in the neighborhood of 7,650,000 to 7 million in revenues.
7 million, I just said 7 million. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions or?
So, if we were to, I guess this is considered commercial, right? Being that,
Yeah, basically anything other than single-family residential is what we looked at.
so the 300,000 is just those, that isn't including if, for example, I took my home off?
No, that we didn't look at residential, we only looked at what we considered commercial.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Massey?
can I ask a question?
Sure.
So, this question may not sound right, but since you raised it, I'm going to ask it. You alluded to it. Why did you only look at one and not the other one?
Well, it's just too difficult. I mean, we can look at it. It wouldn't take that long to look at it, but we thought what was presented to us primarily was commercial irrigation leaving the system. We haven't had any requests that I know of for residential to leave the system.
Are you able
But
to?
we can certainly look at that. We have all the data.
Right. So, I'm just curious, in terms of residential, how would you extrapolate, for example, how much of my water goes towards irrigation versus usage, for?
We have two things that we could look at. One, there are a number of people that have separate irrigation meters, so we
Okay.
could look at that automatically. Anybody else disconnecting would actually be a reduction of use, not, they wouldn't physically disconnect. You would choose to use less water. Because if you only have one meter, you can't obviously
Oh,
disconnect.
right, okay.
But if you had a spare irrigation meter, then you could disconnect that part of the system.
But you'd have a tough time trying to figure out how much I use for irrigation versus for personal use.
Well, we've got enough data that we can look at just about anything you want us to look at. I mean, we have, with this reading system that we have, we can look at pretty much anybody's meter hourly usages.
Okay. Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chair, I was told by someone in the water department, which I believe this to be true now, I'm not throwing someone under the bus, is that, especially during the summer month, during that period, help me out here, Superintendent, if I'm wrong, or help me out, Mr. Ponder, is that if you lose, every time you use is 100 gallons, it registers in the township.
It's 100 cubic feet that you're billed for. You get billed for every 100 cubic feet that you use.
Okay, on the system, the computerized system that we have here at the township, if you use X number of gallons per cubic feet, okay, so you can tell that it has gone up from where it was during the winter months,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Okay, so that data is available, right, to you?
Like I said, we have enough data that we can analyze just about anything you'd like us to analyze.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Guzet?
Yeah, I had a question for Mr. Laddie. If, Mr. Laddie, if this was proposed that, the commercials were allowed to do this, wouldn't we also have to do that for all residentials? Because you can't just do one.
Correct.
So we'd almost have to look at both sides because you can have, this is just a total effect of,
And when you, Mr. Potter, when you say commercial, you mean multiple users?
Yes.
Okay.
Anything, we analyzed anything but single-family residential.
And I had a discussion with Jeff Sears, and he pointed this out, and it mathematically it makes a lot of sense. there is a point at which somebody who is currently connected to irrigation in a single-family residence, there's an analysis they would need to conduct to decide whether or not drilling a new well, paying whatever cross-connection fees exist, and whatever other expenses are involved, if that would be worth their while to make that investment. And so maybe it's not as obvious. It would be a harder choice for a residential user as opposed to a multiple user.
Yeah, and that's why I said, I think in a residential case, it's primarily a decision to use less water, not necessarily disconnect and drill a well, because the cost effectiveness isn't likely there.
And so it's probably an accurate statement. I know you don't have the data in front of you now. It's probably an accurate statement to say that the single-family residential impact would be significantly less than the multiple user impact.
Probably, and we see it on an annual basis. If we have a relatively cool, wet summer, we see a significantly less amount of outdoor usage. If we have a very hot summer, we see significantly more usage. That's why if you're in the water business, you pray for hot months so that you make some money. But that's kind of what we're looking at.
So, Mr. Guzak, I mean, he doesn't have that single-family user data for you, but it's going to be less impactful, I think, than your multiple user data.
Right, but we'd probably offer it to both, so we'd have to have all the numbers because,
Would offer to both, sure.
right, so if we're gonna offer it to both, then we have to have more numbers to show how much we're gonna lose, I guess.
Mr. Mansour and then Mr. Massey.
Supervisor Bennett, to you and whoever you want to show this to. So how did we separate the amount of water for irrigation from the total water usage in the study? That's the first question. And the second one is, how was the lower rate due to a lower peak usage during the summer figured into the report cost?
Potter?
We have, all of the commercial irrigation has separate meters, so it's relatively easy to isolate that usage. And then what we looked at in terms of the cost is we looked at the revenue that was going to be lost, and then we also looked at how much lower our water bill was going to be at the township, and then subtracted the two. So the revenue loss is $894,761. The saved expense from Genesee County is $571,481 with a net of $323,80. We looked at it, but we don't think it's going to have an impact in terms of the peak monthly, which is I think the question where you might be going, was because of last year the peak monthly came down this year, and the next step down it's not very unlikely that we could get the next step down. So, and the county's also rearranging their rates, so we don't know if there's going to be an impact, but we've never been at the next lower level in 15 years, so. Did that answer the?
All right, so, okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Massey.
Oh, yes, Mr. Pilot, my question deals with the cost of a well. When you get into the engineering aspect of digging a well, I know it's based on the water level, but let me give you an example, what my question is. Say you went down 70 feet, you hit water, but based on your usage, that stream of water doesn't supply enough for what you need. You have to go down another, just using this as an example, 90 feet. Has that been your experience?
I haven't got that much experience with wells here in terms of residential wells. We have wells that are backup wells for the township that are larger wells, 4-inch wells. But most of the well people in the township area are very familiar with the aquifers and know how deep they need to go in a particular area.
Okay.
It doesn't really answer your question, but that's the best I can do.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll expect a report on, by maybe the end of the month then.
Yes.
Okay.
And one other thing on the wells while I'm thinking about it. Wells are under the purview of the Genesee County Health Department and the Michigan Department of Eagle, whatever it is now. So it's not a township function. It's a Genesee County Health Department and state function in terms of permitting and overseeing wells, commercial and residential wells.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So at this time, we'll move to review the agenda for February 13th for Thursday. And we will be approving some minutes. In our consent agenda, we have the treasurer's financial activity recap for expenditure of $863,757. Next item on the consent agenda will be a motion to approve the expenditure of $16,150 for annual renewal of the ESRI software and authorized township superintendent. Everybody, questions on that?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr.
I
Massey?
have a question. In the past few months, haven't we discussed this before?
The ERSI,
Yes.
it's an annual expenditure, and that, Mr. Lehman?
This is really our licensing and maintenance agreements with the software, so this hasn't come before us in the last few months.
Something similar to this was on the agenda before. I forgot what it was. I thought you may have remembered. What did, well, okay.
There's several of them.
Oh, really?
We've got a lot.
Oh, okay, okay. Thank you.
Item C, the board will consider a motion to approve the expenditure of $12,623.19 for the annual renewal of the census analytics meter reading system hosting and maintenance fees, and authorize township superintendent to exercise all, or execute all related documents as another DPW related software for monitoring and everything. Annual fee. And then item D, the board will consider a motion to approve the capital project expenditure of $85,550 for the purchase of following vehicles. One 2020 Chevrolet Tahoe Police Pursuit Rated four-wheel drive marked vehicle to be used in the patrol division, one 2020 Ford Explorer, and one 2020 Ford Fusion, and ancillary equipment to outfit the marked vehicle.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Massey.
it appears nothing has changed since the chief came before us. I think it was last year. He talked about purchasing some vehicles. Are these the same vehicles?
Chief Wiles? Good evening.
Good evening.
So these vehicles have been on the schedule for replacement, or?
They have, yes. The one marked vehicle, I would anticipate later in the year I would come back to this board for authorization for another marked vehicle. The reason I'm only asking for one now is, one, I only need one right now. But secondly, GM, when they went through their strike, screwed up their production a little bit and when they can get vehicles out. So we were notified that putting together 2021 vehicles, taking orders for those wouldn't happen way late in the year. So that's why Berger Chevrolet, where we get our vehicles from through the bid price, they bought up a bunch of them at the end of 19. So we have those on reserve. That's why I come to you early in the year for that vehicle now.
Mr. Guzek?
Yeah, I just had one question.
Sure.
So basically, only one of the vehicles will be taking a lease out, right?
Correct. Currently, if you remember, back in 2016, I believe, we had 3 leased
We had
vehicles.
3 leases and we got rid of one.
We have gotten rid of all of them now. They're all off Grand Blanc Township property. They've all been picked up. That was early last week. They all got picked up. So we are officially out of the lease business.
Okay, because it only indicates one leasing going away.
Yeah, the other 2 are already gone.
Okay.
So now they're all off the property. Enterprise, the company we used to lease those vehicles, has come and picked them up, and they are no longer Grand Blanc Township
So we
vehicles.
won't have any more lease payments next
No
month,
more
right?
payments.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Chief. Under operational issues, item A, the board will consider a motion to approve Misty Moen, Senior Center Coordinator, as the authorized signatory for the contract with Genesee County Office of Senior Services. Mr. Limita?
So in your packet, we had the contract in there. We met with the Genesee County Office of Senior Services representatives, and they are prepared to update the contract, but the person who signs this agreement also has to be the person who is going to be providing the reimbursement paperwork on a monthly basis back to the county so that we can get repaid the $170-some thousand that we're eligible for the Grand Blanc Senior Center. Misty has agreed serve as that person. Prior to this, it was the director Kay and then the interim director Carol. Misty's very confident in her ability to continue to provide the recap of that paperwork to the county, and we had a very productive meeting last week, and this was their request. We do need the board to approve her to sign the contract. We'll have her name, and we did give the county, they'll be providing us with an updated contract that we should have before Thursday so that we can authorize Misty to sign, and we won't miss a beat. The first one that Misty will apply for will be for the month of February.
Okay.
It's always 1 month in arrears.
I don't know if everybody's met Misty, our new senior center director, so I don't know, stand up, Misty, and we appreciate having you on board. Okay?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I have a question, and you sort of referred to my question when you spoke.
Yes.
And my question is, you referred to Misty as the director, and we have down here the coordinator.
Okay, coordinator.
So,
All right, I
which
misspoke.
one? Well, I didn't say you misspoke. Which one are we going with? We're so accustomed to saying
Right.
director.
Well, I think the county refers to it as coordinator, is that correct? Director at the county. Is it director? Okay,
See, we should change it to director.
It
yeah. Makes no difference.
It doesn't make any difference. It's a
Right.
name, so I mean, you can change your business cards, change your name tag, change whatever. I mean, you'll have to change your agreement, but
Well, everything, I mean, all the paperwork will match. That's the point that I'm trying to make. If you guys don't see there's a
As
problem.
long as she knows what her title is and good with it, I'm good. All right, we're okay? All right. And it's important we get that paperwork right, because I think I signed that stuff too to get that reimbursement, so. I need that. So anyways, the next item, the board will consider a resolution to approve Michael Dowler, MMAO, as the assessor of record for Grand Blanc Township. Township is required to have a MMAO certified assessor to certify the tax roll for a March board of review. Mr. Limita?
so good news. We've grown enough in taxable value that we are required to have a level 4 certified assessor to authorize our tax roll. Even better news, Michael Dowler, who has been an employee of ours for quite some time in the assessing department, achieved that certification in December of 2019. He is here this evening and be happy to answer any questions for you guys as well. But we were informed late last year that we were going to be required to have a level 4 assessor authorize the tax roll this year. This happened to us 3 years ago. We were able to pull the Consumers Energy Personal Property Tax out, have a level 4 authorize that. That brought us back down below the limit and bought us time. This year we did attempt to put an application in for a waiver. We had a level 4 that was authorized, or that was had agreed to sign it and do the exact same thing. But when you sign those waivers, you're telling the state the reason you're asking for a waiver instead of a permanent change to your assessor of record is because you have a plan in place for the future. And our plan was that we had 2 employees actually studying to get their level 4 certification. Well, one of those was Michael, and he achieved that certification in December. So the State Tax Commission declined our application for the waiver, primarily because we said we were asking for it while we had people studying to be level 4s. Michael did achieve the level 4 certification, so that made it pretty easy for the State Tax Commission to decline it. They do require that the board make a motion to select that assessor of record. It also means that your current director of assessing, Becky Salvati, will have to submit the same form that says that she is no longer the assessor of record. So I'd like to have these both going at the same time. We do, obviously time is of the essence with March tax roll. Like I said, Michael is here this evening, and I'm sure he can answer any questions that you guys might have as well, but we do need him to authorize our tax roll for March Board of Review.
Michael, I don't know if, come on up to the podium. I'm not sure if you've met
Yeah, I don't know if
all of our board members, but
knows who I am or not.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been here, that kind of thing would be helpful.
I'm Michael Dollar. I've been in the assessing department going on 6 years in October now as an appraiser, a level 3 appraiser when I was hired there. This is kind of, in our department, we had a succession program, and this was kind of part of that succession program. And I did go ahead and pursue the level 4 certification for that because we all knew that Grand Blanc Township would grow enough someday to become a level 4 unit again.
so level 4 is the highest there is, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
They
So,
used to have the old level, well, it used to have a 1, 2, 3, 4, or a 2, 3, 4, but now they've done away with numbers and they like letters better now.
okay,
So,
MMAO, okay.
yeah,
So you're in demand as a level 4, from what I understand,
yes.
that municipalities that reach a certain taxable value, I don't know, what is that taxable value that?
I can't quote you with
Okay,
that
well
number.
anyways, we've reached that threshold and
Yes,
we're
we
there,
have.
so,
It's your commercial industrial that's pushed you over.
okay.
Is a certain percentage of your SEV of your commercial industrial, if it is above a certain number, then
Mhm.
it requires a level 4.
Okay. All right, any questions, Mr. Mansour? Yes, go ahead.
Maybe have a little bit more, just a little bit more detail about what's required for a level 4, kind of how many of those there are in the county.
Are you familiar with that
In the county.
information?
I will tell you this, how many years ago, Michael, did they change the process even for when you can test, when you can take it to certify? And it was really, in my humble opinion, was done to really tighten up the training and certification. It does require a tremendous amount of dedication for somebody to actually go through and become MMAO certified. So it's really, number one, kudos to Michael for all the hard work and working through that while he was still working his full-time job here and doing that on the side. So I think that in itself tells you the caliber of the individuals who are willing to pursue that.
On his own initiative. too.
On his own initiative. And it created a shortage of qualified assessors throughout the state of Michigan. There's just absolutely no doubt that there is a definite shortage of especially MAAO and MMAO assessors through the state of Michigan, because it's just not as easy to get certified as it once was. And that really changed. I mean, it's within the last 10 years that the state tax commission made those changes. So we are incredibly lucky that he was able, to put the work in and to achieve that certification in December, because with them turning down our waiver request, I mean, the next step is that if we don't have the ability to have a MMAO certify our tax roll, that it gets turned over to the county. Their county assumes your tax roll, and nobody wants that to happen.
So how many do you think there are in the county? Any idea, Michael?
The equalization director is, and there's no other working one. Flint Township requires a 4, but they've contracted with a guy.
I was going to say the one fellow whose name I can't
Bill
remember.
Farber.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm aware of 2 in the county.
Okay,
3 now.
You're right.
all right. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Dowler.
Thank you.
Item C, the board will hear an update from the Parks and Recreation Subcommittee. So I'm not sure, I know that we had the interviews last Wednesday, and Mr. Adkins, yourself, Ms. Nidzwicki, our HR specialist, and then we also had several board members, I think, that sat in, or maybe one, I know Mr. Mansour did. Okay, Ms. Lane during some of them. So with that, Mr. Atkins, anything to report on the interview process, or?
Looks like we'll have 1 or 2 more candidates out of a list of 9 others that came in kind of late after we collected the first 26 or so. And out of that 9, I think there'll be 1 or 2 finalists to do a face-to-face interview this week, and then it'll be narrowed down to probably 2 or 3 total.
So when are we thinking that we'll have the committee will have 2 or 3 more to interview, you're saying, Mr. Atkins? Is that
2 more.
2?
Yeah.
And then probably bring 2 of them or 1 of them to the board, or what are you thinking?
Probably 2.
2, okay.
Yep.
Anything to add, Mr. Limada?
I will say the process went very well. We had some very qualified candidates. We had some really good interviews, and I think we get these next 2 done. I think that the subcommittee will be prepared to make their recommendation to the full board, and like I said, bring in the top 2 candidates. But I think I know that everybody or several board members had a chance to sit in and see some of the candidates. Nobody saw all of them like the rest of us did, or maybe Clerk Lane was in on all, so observed all of them. Very quality candidates. We're impressed. We had 28 overall applicants, especially at a time when it's not necessarily the best time for people looking for work at the end of the year during the holiday season. So we did that very impressive, and then it really, because time is of the essence here, if we're prepared to move forward before the 4th Tuesday, then I think that you may want to consider a special meeting just to bring them in to really get this process moving. So
And
the board can make
when
their
are we talking
selection.
about that, Mr. Limada?
As soon as we get those interviews done, I think then the committee would be prepared to make their recommendation to the board.
So sometime in the next couple weeks then? Maybe?
Yeah, before the 4th Tuesday at any rate.
For sure.
Okay. Mr. Massey,
You answered my question before the 4th Tuesday.
All right.
That
Okay.
was my question.
anything else on Parks and Rec? Okay. With that, we're going to move to next item, D. The board will consider a motion to approve the expenditure of $20,440 to Metcalf Electric for the installation of LED lighting in Township Hall, and authorize Township Superintendent to execute all related documents. Mr. Mansour?
Yep. Can we move that topic to the consent agenda?
Sure. I don't have any problem with it. Okay. Item E, the board will consider a motion to approve the road construction agreement for Grand Blanc Estates SAD with the Genesee County Road Commission, and authorize Township Supervisor to execute all related contracts and agreements. Probably can move that to the consent agenda unless somebody has anything on that if you want as well. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, that's fine
Okay.
to go ahead and move that if you want. The one thing, Clerk Lane and I were discussing the fact that we need a second hearing for that, what we call a cost hearing traditionally. And then I did have a question for the board and primarily for Treasurer Guzak. I'm guessing this is going to be a project that we're going to bond for. Is that it?
Yeah, as far as I know. I haven't been told otherwise, so.
Perfect. So you can go ahead and move forward with this agreement. We will follow probably, I would think we could go until March for the cost hearing or the approval of the assessment roll. And then we might as well, Earl, we may as well contact Roger Swets and get the bonding lined up.
Mr. Sears, is March okay for that hearing?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, all right. I know the further we get in the season for bidding, the price can go up, but that's probably still early enough, huh?
As long as the cost agreement's approved, then I can submit that to the road commission and they can start designing it, and we'll be good.
Okay, all right. Mr. Mansur?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So that was actually my question. Is this cost level kind of what we've been talking about with the public, with the residents, so there's no
Surprise.
Yeah, I mean, this is, it's based on the estimate that all the residents had received, so unless bidding comes back differently, it has to come back to the township board anyways if it's over a certain point, so. Their bids have been coming back pretty reasonable, and we're early enough in the season yet, so that we should.
Mr. Guzak?
So the bids aren't in yet, right?
No, they haven't designed the project yet. We have to approve this agreement before the road commission designs it, and then they'll go out for bid.
Right.
I would assume if we approved it now, they could start designing it, maybe go out for bid in April.
Right. And then, of course, the normal procedure is we don't go out for bond until we have the final, until the bids are back in. We don't bid it, we don't go to the bond attorney. I can talk to them about it, but we can't get a bond. We usually have the exact amount.
Sure.
Ms. Lane?
I wanted to remind everybody that this was going to be our first 15-year agreement, again, because the cost of redoing roads has increased.
Good point. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sears.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Massey.
may I ask why some of these say superintendent and some say supervisor?
Depends on if they want to put me on the hook or Dennis, but Mr. Limita?
I can answer that.
Okay.
The road
Legally,
commission
right.
requires the supervisor to execute most of these agreements. So anything, when I bring any kind of an invoice or an estimate, the superintendent can usually execute those because he's here, 40 hours a week. Scott's here all the time also. But the road commission, when they send us these agreements, they require the supervisor to execute them. That's their official that they recognize in the county, I guess.
Okay.
Okay. Item F, the board will consider a motion to approve the 2020 catch basin repairs for an amount not to exceed $43,000 and authorize township supervisor to execute all related contracts and agreements. Mr. Sears, I didn't look to see what we spent last year on that, but is that a similar amount to last year?
Yeah, it's right in line with exactly what we spent, and it'll fluctuate. This is the high end. The estimate is the road commission has certain repairs that they'll make, and they estimate high for every one of them. So the number will come in lower than what we're approving tonight.
And this is actually half the cost, right? They'll put in another
Correct.
$43,000 to
Correct.
match that.
Yes.
And this is for, just so the residents know, when we get phone calls, what have you, or you get phone calls saying, hey, the storm sewer out in front of my house by the curb is caving in, or there's a sinkhole, this is what it's going to repair.
Right.
How many do you think will repair with $86,000? Any idea?
It's $20,000 the township, $20,000
okay.
or road commission, so about
All right.
$40,000. I believe there were 13 or 14 included in the packet. 13. Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Massey.
can this go to the consent?
I'm sorry?
Can this be put on the consent agenda?
If everybody's okay with it. Okay. Item G, the board will consider a motion to approve an agreement between the township and Genesee County Road Commission for the bidding and contract administration of the District 8 sewer and water utilities along the Dordt Highway extension, and authorize township supervisor to execute all related contracts and agreements. And this has been an agreement that I know Mr. Laddie's, I believe, reviewed, and I think we're good with it, obviously.
Yeah, Mr. Laddie's reviewed it. I've been back and forth with the road commission on it several times. Row Engineering's been involved with it. They've been reviewing it as well as Potter Consulting and Dennis. Mm-hmm. So we've really made this a good agreement that protects the township, it protects the road commission, everybody's best interests at hand, and we still have control over our project, but we can hopefully get really good pricing with economy of scale by including the road and the water and sewer work in the same contract.
Well, this is going to be the first step to getting the Dordt Highway extension.
Absolutely. This is the
underway.
last step before it goes out for bid, so.
Right. So we're nearing the beginning point.
Correct.
Mr. Guzek.
Yeah, I just had one question. Has it been decided yet whether we're gonna bond this or if we're gonna pay for it out of our fund? Has that been decided yet?
We believe this will be cash. We'll pay out of the fund balance for this.
Okay.
Mr. Supervisor?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Do we need another lengthy discussion about it Thursday?
I think so. Should we put it on the consent agenda is what you're asking?
Yes.
I'm okay with
Well,
it.
you can always
Everybody
pull it
else?
off if you figure something.
Yeah.
You can always pull it back
Right.
out. If you got a question, you should
It's
certainly.
not
do
an
that.
issue that it's a resolution, is it?
Oh, that's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Is it a resolution?
It's not a resolution.
It didn't say a
It just says a motion.
It said a motion here.
Resolution, though.
Well, to approve an amended resolution.
There's a
Oh,
motion.
sorry.
No, that's
Approve
one
agreement.
below. This
Okay.
one's a motion, it's okay.
All right, perfect.
Okay. The next
We'll
one we
move it to the
probably
consent
can't.
agenda for Thursday.
And Might as well stay close to the front here, Mr. Sears, but item H, the board will consider a motion to approve an amended resolution to adopt the Genesee County Stormwater and Flood Control Design Standard requirements in its entirety. So have they made any drastic changes in the,
No, I came to the board with this last, I want to say September, maybe early July. And we approved this resolution once. We turned it in with our application for our MS4 permit, which is a stormwater permit for basically, in our case, the township campus is our only MS4 permit we'll have. The state sent it back to us. They didn't like our resolution because myself and Jack Wheatley omitted one of the sections from Genesee County standards that we didn't feel was necessary to have in there because it just encompasses the township campus and it doesn't have any bearing on future development throughout the township. So in order to get the permit done, we thought it'd be best just to pass the resolution, include all of the Genesee County specifications as a whole, and it adopt their entire document as our own, and move forward with this and get it done. We've, as a background, we've been working on this MS4 permit since I came here in 2014. So the state's been very backlogged on it, and they're always in a hurry, but then it takes months to get responses from them, and then, but now they really want to get it done, and we really want to get it done. So we feel that adopting this resolution will button it up, and we'll get the permit.
Mr. Lehman, anything?
You know, and it really, you guys approved it in July of 2019, and it really, when we looked at our application for it, and the resolution to adopt, it was really like one line that we weren't adopting the Part B, or we excluded Part B or something, and it became, it could potentially be an issue with the approval, so we decided we better revise the resolution and send it in.
Okay, we'll keep that on the agenda for Thursday since it's a resolution, I believe, so.
Cool.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sears. So, did you have a question, Mr. Guzette?
Yeah, I just had a question. I don't know if I can ask it now. It was a question in the, from Jeff on some of the things he's got in the loop in the projects and stuff. Do we ask that now? Or when
With some other projects, or?
Well, all the projects, just a summary of all the items that you addressed.
Mr. Sears?
Is that all right? Yeah, I just had a question, because I know originally there was thought, you know, I know we've got the campus, possibly the DPW building, and the fire department building. But I know originally when it started out, there was such a shortage in our mechanics section.
Correct.
That we were gonna just move them into one pole barn and build another pole barn.
Correct.
Stuff that was in there, and that's never mentioned anywhere, so I don't know why because, is it on the back burner? Because now they've got Parks and Rec they have to take care of, and they got fire department, so it seems like that should be the first thing. But
yeah, since we moved the fire department and Parks and Rec, and it has been on the back burner for me personally.
Right.
I just haven't been able to work on it. Me and Chief Burdette have had some discussions on starting to draft an RFP to look at architecture services and to study it a little bit more. Obviously, we had the space needs assessment done that gave us what the fire department needs and what the DPW needs for space into the future. So that has been on the back burner, but
my question was, I thought the most immediate need was the mechanics bay, you know.
that is true.
Instead of building the other thing, is there any way that can be done before all this other stuff's done? Because
Well, what we were gonna do with the mechanics bay is move them into our existing pole barn because we want them on a central location.
Right, and
here
then
at
just build
Township
another
Hall.
pole barn, because obviously you have to have a pole barn. So I
Right.
thought maybe this would be phase one, move them in, build a pole barn, because the buildings could be a lot farther off.
True.
Because in the meantime, they've got to take care of all, the fire department, they got to take care of Parks and Rec now.
Right.
And of course, they're limited in space anyway, so I was just curious.
Yeah, we're gonna start looking at, as soon as I get Parks and Rec moved into this building and buttoned up, we're gonna start looking at writing that
pole barn.
RFP to, start,
Bring
with
to the board.
architecture services.
And that'll come to the board, obviously.
It'll come to the board for more direction.
Well, I know, I was
anyway,
just
so
curious, because I knew,
absolutely.
just to get an update on it.
Sure,
All right.
absolutely.
So we, just to let the board know, we're going back to the Tuesday agenda now, and we're gonna review the Parks and Rec budget. And we are going to need an executive session to talk about an attorney written opinion, so just keep that in mind for a little bit later here. So with that, we have before us the Parks and Rec budget. Mr. Lehman, do you want to give a little bit of background on how we came to this budget for the public and for our board?
Yes, so again, the projected budget that we put together is really a derivative of the prior budgets that have been supplied to the Township Board from the Parks and Rec Commission with some obvious changes. We had to take out the city's contribution from $122,000 roughly down to $6,000 that's proposed. There's also, again, this is the first year for us bringing it in-house. We're making some changes to administrative or overall wages because we're collapsing a couple positions. So again, while it's I feel fairly confident in what we've done. Again, it's our first time really looking at all these separate things from the line items for revenue and expenses as far as what happens from the activity, special events, those kind of things. Those are all kind of contingent upon how well we continue to operate those. I did, and again, we have Senya from Parks and Recreation and Misty from the Senior Center here to help answer any of the board's concerns or questions about individual revenue or expense items.
So, Mr. Lehman, if I understand correctly, I mean, we're taking on the Parks and Rec, and so basically their budget that they had, probably with some minor changes, we pretty much adopted what they had within reason.
Correct.
Okay. All right, so we'll open it up to the board to ask any specific questions on any of the items, or do we want to go that route, or do we want to go line by line, or why don't we just ask if anybody has any questions to start with? Mr. Massey?
Oh, I was gonna say, why can't we wait till Thursday to go over this?
Mr. Lemata is going to be out of town on Thursday, so if we want to go over it on Thursday, we won't have his input. We might be able to have Misty and Senya here, but
Well, it shouldn't be that complicated. It was just some questions just for clarification. I'm quite sure.
well,
Quite frankly, I put it on Tuesdays just because I went back to review what the board had asked for, and they said to put it on the first meeting in February, and that's why I put it on committee of the whole. But Tuesday or Thursday's discussion, from my standpoint,
right.
doesn't make any difference. I mean, we can certainly ask both Senya and Misty if they're available on Thursday, except I will be out of town on Thursday.
Will both of you be available Thursday? Okay. Mr. Atkins?
I mean, I'm pretty comfortable with it. I think, since it's a new department, there'll always be opportunity to improve, but you have to kind of adopt kind of some of the history of what they've been working with, so you understand where your baseline is going forward. So maybe next year's would be a little more detailed conversation or line items, but I think for a starting point, this is kind of where we've been, so.
I agree. I think there's going to be some huge adjustments to this thing as we go through. For example, there's a couple of fundraisers that I don't know that the township really wants to operate. The one is the what is it? Hard Times Party. And I forget what the amount is that we raised from that, but that's going to be an adjustment. And there's several things like that. The amount that the city contributed, all those are going to fluctuate. So I think it's going to take us a year, and this thing can be amended at any given point. And it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to spend these amounts. It's just we've got to have something to operate with.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even our staff is going to, our new director, when they come on, are going to have a lot of leeway to say, hey, we're going to start a new program, we're going to need to budget for this, what have you. Mr. Guzak?
Yeah, because I think this is an older one, because it still has a city contribution at 121,000, right? So that's gonna go
That
down
was
to
in the
6.
proposed Parks and Rec Commission information. If you look to the right on the township proposed budget, that's been taken out and reduced
Oh, okay.
for the February through December to 5,500.
Okay, great.
So what we're looking at here is, for the public's sake, we've got basically what on the left-hand column, the Parks and Recreation Commission budget, and then we also have revised or proposed annual budget and proposed February through December numbers. So,
Mr. Chair,
yes, Mr. Massey?
what I'm hearing from Trustee Lonnie
Yes.
and you is that it's not necessary to get into a deep dive now because it's subject to change at any moment. I use the moment
Right.
phrase, okay, so I'm okay with as it is.
Okay. I think it's going to be a working document, even more so than our regular budget. We've got years of annual history. With the parks budget, it's a whole new game, and I think we're going to be probably looking at it on a regular basis, anyways.
So I'm okay
So,
with it as
okay.
it is.
Mr. Mansour?
So I have a question about this. Is there capital expense baked into this somewhere?
So the capital is not within this budget. The capital expenditures that we have proposed is in your regular, or was included in the regular 2020 fiscal year budget as part of the CIP, and then into the special revenue funds budget under Parks and Recreation. It was included for those expenditures that were proposed and what were on that. Obviously subject to change because the board still needs to review that expenditure, and I thought that with the new director coming on, the board may want to be having that conversation with the director on kind of a reprioritization of those capital expenditures, but is not included in the expenditures of this document before you.
So there's a tab that's for Parks and Rec and the CIP, right? Just
It
for
is.
specifically for Parks
In
and Rec.
our 2020 fiscal year budget, those are accounted for, the $340,000 roughly that we have to spend this year.
Right.
And that's the millage money, right?
Correct.
Okay. Well, Ms. Lane?
My question is, was the proposal to adopt this proposed Township 2020 Parks and Rec budget as presented tonight?
You guys
We
did that
did
on
that.
the last
Yeah, we
meeting,
did
so
that.
we're
I just
fine. It
wanted
was
to
only
make
back
sure.
out, the board had some concerns and wanted more time to review the budget after last time, and asked that it be on the first meeting in February for a little bit closer look.
Well, I think everybody understands it's going to be a working document that we need to have lots of flexibility.
I don't think there's a need for it to be discussed on Thursday night because I think we will be working on it. So I don't want to see it added and take up
Right.
unnecessary time.
Okay.
And Scott, if I could,
Right,
just
sure.
an update, I sent the board an email out earlier, but we did identify the contracts for people who have agreements for usage of the fields for both soccer, lacrosse, Little League, and youth football. A couple different soccer organizations. I believe if Sonia was able to schedule that meeting, but we'll start with Little League tomorrow. We're doing a review of all those agreements. Obviously, we're also in the process of really taking a review of whether we're capturing the correct amount. Some of these have been signed in 2018 through 2021, proposed from the Parks and Rec Commission. Obviously, those have been voided, so we let them know that they were void, that we're looking forward to meeting with them over the course of the next 2 weeks. A lot of those youth sports organizations are really concerned with locking down their field time, certainly, and the board heard from Mr. Babcock from the Fire Sticks College Exposure Tournament as well. We're going to try to get them all in here within the next week to 10 days and review their proposals. What my suggestion would be is that we're only going to do a kind of 1-year agreements because we need the time to really review if we're getting accurate cost projections and that we're recouping our costs. We've got a good cost recovery system in there, with the idea that we're happy to sign, longer term or 3-year contracts with these folks, but there's got to be a provision in there for our ability to change for that cost recovery review as we get through our first year of operation.
Mr. Mansour?
So I have a question about that. I think it's great that we're going through those one by one. It's probably overdue, and et cetera. And I think the idea of 1 year thing also makes sense as well. Is there some kind of standard that we're using as we agree to these, some standard format or template that identifies, what we're willing to give in terms of services, what the expectations of the renters would be, et cetera, so that we, kind of put the first foot forward?
Yeah, what I ultimately want to do is have one agreement, and yeah, there will have to be some adjustments in there to accommodate different requirements, obviously, but ultimately one document that everybody signs, and we can add the addendum for some things that we need to do. But I think that's very important, Trustee Mansour, is that we really we're not making different agreements for every organization. That's kind of what we're faced with here, is we've got a different agreement for every organization, and I just don't think that's an appropriate way to do business moving forward.
Yeah, Mr. Mansour?
So can we see some kind of a draft of a standard agreement for our tournament, maybe as a part of the subcommittee, so we can kind of just take a look at that?
Sure.
And I could see where there might be some options if they want to pay for having whatever done, but that'll be up, but it'll be all in writing and they'll pay for it, so. Okay, with that, I think, Mr. Laddie, you wrote an opinion for written correspondence to our board?
I did. It came to you rather late today, and so if you wouldn't mind a brief closed session to discuss it, and I can answer any questions that you have, and you can give me some direction, I appreciate it.
I would so move that we go into executive session to review an attorney's written legal opinion.
Ms. Lane?
Mr. Mansour?
Yes.
Mr. Atkins?
Yes.
Mr. Buzat?
Yes.
Mr. Massey? Myself, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Strategy.
Okay.